Listen, welcome back. This is the Real Nathan Daly, and this is another episode of the Crime Classroom. You guys, listen, this case isn't about racism. This is not about left, right, red, or blue. You guys, this is about teenagers. This isn't about the media and their hypocrisy, their bias. This isn't about bad actors who use the emotions and the historical pain of people to manipulate them and finesse them out of their pocket. We're not talking about grifters, you guys. This is not what this is about. Contrary to what you believe, there are people who want to take advantage of the emotional pain, the ignorance of people in order to capitalize. The media does a great job at it. This is a profitable subject matter. Why? Because they know that this sparks up a lot of controversy. And where there's controversy, there's money to be had. You guys, this is not about black culture. This isn't about the FBI statistics about who commits more crime compared to the other. This isn't about one-parent households or two-parent households. This is about a decision that two teenagers made that they should not have made. You guys, we're going to cover it over here on this case. This is how we break down a case absent of bias, absent of racism, absent of ignorance, and absent of hatred. I've seen so many videos of so-called professionals, where they're attorneys, okay, where they're professional grifters, okay, or whether it's left-leaning, right-leaning cult groups. It doesn't matter. In Texas, you have a right to stand your ground. What does that mean? It means that you're not obligated to retreat. You're not obligated. If someone is trying to use a level of force on you, you are allowed to defend yourself. You're allowed to protect yourself, but it has to be reasonable. It has to be proportionate with the level of force that's presented. Listen, in no way ever of being pushed, like I said before, are you allowed to use deadly force on a person. It's unlawful. It's against the law. It's excessive. Many people want to compare the Kyle Rittenhouse or the Trayvon Martin. Listen, you guys, those are unique cases. You can't compare them. Anytime you use excessive force, you guys, that is the deal breaker on self-defense. The force has to be justifiably reasonable. It has to be reasonable. George Zimmerman was put in a situation where he felt in that moment that his life was in danger. He was getting the snot beat out of him by a teenager. And in that moment of trying to preserve his life, you guys, he drew a weapon and he shot him. And that ultimately killed Trayvon Martin, and people had a problem with it, you guys. But the use of force and self-defense, it's a slippery slope if you don't understand the intricate details of it. In this case here, you have Karmelo, who used excessive force against Austin. You can't stab a person in the chest, you guys, unless you are using a level or a weapon as a threat equalizer. What do I mean by that? You guys, Austin and his brother Hunter, there's a possibility that they were both involved. And if that's the case, you have two brothers who are 6'1", 225 pounds against Karmelo, who is 5'9", 130 pounds. If that's the case, and a weapon is introduced as a threat equalizer, you guys, the self-defense claim gets a little stronger. Okay, it gets a little stronger. Whether you like it or not, it gets a little stronger. Here's the thing. If Austin and Hunter together participated in the threats, in the aggression towards Karmelo, you guys, he has a strong argument for self-defense. He's not fighting one person. The fear of being assaulted by multiple people changes and raises the threat level and could very much well justify his self-defense. Now, here's the problem. If the brother, Hunter, was not involved, he didn't participate in the verbal disputes, he didn't participate in any threats, he never assaulted, he never did anything or any provoking nature, he didn't provocate anything, guess what? The claims of self-defense greatly diminish for Karmelo. And what does that mean? You guys, the charges are going to be strong. Okay, you're not going to be able to justify using a knife against someone who pushed, punched, or assaulted you. There just is no justification for it. Okay, so that is the problem with this case. Karmelo used deadly force in a situation that on the surface looks like deadly force is not acceptable. But the problem is, and the key to this whole entire case is what was said. This is equivalent to the situation that happened on the subway with Jordan Neely, with the whole idea that you can threaten someone and make threatening words and gestures, though you may never actually physically harm or touch anyone, is enough for someone to use deadly force against you. You guys, that's why you have to be careful when you analyze these cases if you don't properly understand the idea that a person can make threats but never actually physically touch you. Well, according to Texas law, here's what's interesting about self-defense. A person is justified in using force against another when, to the degree the actor reasonably believes the force is immediately necessary to protect the actor against others' use or attempted use of unlawful force. Why do I say that? Attempted use. So this is key, okay? Listen, in the cases of use of force in self-defense, I don't have to wait for you to use deadly force. If I have reason to believe that you're using a force on me, or you're going to use a level of force that's going to put me in great bodily harm or death, I can use lethal force against you, you guys. This is why I say this entire case hinges on the conversation and the verbal dispute that took place between Karmelo and Austin. What did they say that made Karmelo believe that he was in fear for his life? That's so important. And these are the things that get shelled out during trial. And people are like, oh, wow, I didn't know he said that. Oh, wow, I didn't know he did that. This is why we have to wait for the facts of the case to be revealed before we pass judgment. It's innocent until proven guilty. You guys, that's how it works. We got to talk about the charges. Karmelo's being charged with first-degree murder, but I don't think they're going to get it, you guys. It's not a good charge. I don't think they would get second-degree murder. Why do I say that? Because you got to prove intent. But I understand the logic. The logic is Karmelo came with a knife. He was in possession of a knife. The knife is illegal. Yes, it is. All right, that's another charge that they didn't charge him with that they probably will charge. You guys, you cannot be in possession of a knife in Texas under the age of 18. Karmelo had a knife. It's against the law. He's on school property. It's against the law. 2 violations. Okay, that's another charge that they could charge him with. Okay, whether you believe it or like it or not, the track meet is an extension of the school. It's unlawful to bring a weapon there. He's in the wrong, you guys. That's a violation. But let's talk about the charge of murder. First degree, you got to prove intent. Second degree, you got to prove intent. So here we have the argument that's going to be made is that this was a premeditated situation. He came with a knife. That doesn't make it premeditated, okay? Did he plan to kill Austin? No, you got to prove that. Did he want to kill Austin? I don't know. You got to prove that. Why do I say that? The statements that he made when he was arrested was, is Austin okay? All right, is he okay? You guys, that's so important. That'll be used in trial to suggest that the client had remorse, that he had no intentions of harming him to that level or killing him to that level. He was remorseful. You guys, that shows that there was no intent in the action. Well, what's the more appropriate charge? Manslaughter. Okay, you don't have to prove intent. You just need to prove that this behavior of the suspect was reckless, which it was reckless. You guys, that is the charge that's more appropriate for this case, okay? The argument that they're gonna make is that in that moment, Karmelo had his hand inside the bag, holding on to the knife, while looking at Austin and telling him, touch me and see what happens. Do something and see what happens. People are saying that's provocation, that he's provoking Austin. You guys, that's false. That's not provocation. Provocation is when someone is approaching you, they're testing you, they're insulting you, they're disrespecting you, and they're asking you to do something, provoking you to actually have an emotional response. You guys, that's provocation. But at the same time, there was a dispute, there was a verbal dispute. The provocation could have gone both ways. But the statement that's being used to suggest that Karmelo intentionally and planned this murder was that he held on to the knife, knowing in his mind that he was going to stab him, and he said, do something and see what happens. This is what they're leaning on for their first-degree murder. And I don't think it's strong enough, you guys. I don't think it's strong enough. Why do I say that? Because the primary aggressor, the initial aggressor, is Austin from the very beginning. So the self-defense comes from the person who didn't start the altercation. Okay? But did he provoke? Well, we got to find out. And those facts are in the video. Those facts are in the statements that were shared between both parties. At any point in time, did Karmelo threaten Austin? Or was this position with his hand in the bag and him saying, touch me and see what happens, you guys, that could be argued as a defensive stance. That could be argued as someone giving a warning, not someone tempting you to do something. If you do X, Y, Z, then see what happens. I'm not moving from this area because I don't have to move. And if all the things that you threaten me with transpires, I have something that I'm going to retaliate with. This is the mindset of Karmelo. The question is it legal? You guys, attorneys are going to battle that out. And the argument is going to come down to wordplay. Was this a defensive posture or was this provocation? You guys, in my expert opinion, this is not provocation, it's a defensive posture. I am stating and giving you a warning that if you try to carry out the threat that you spoke about, then I have something to show you. This is not provoking. This is not enticing. This is a warning. Now, I would like to hear people's thoughts on that because it's debatable, right? And we won't know until we get the full words that were transpired between both parties. You're not going to sell first degree, second degree murder. It's going to be very difficult for the state to prove intent when Karmelo didn't start the altercation. What they can prove very easily is manslaughter. Why do I say that? We know that regardless of what transpired, it doesn't matter who the primary aggressor is in the altercation. If you recklessly use a level of force that's unreasonable, that's reckless, and it caused the death of another person, even though they started it, guess what? You're still wrong. You're still in violation and you can be charged. And I believe manslaughter is the more appropriate charge for this case. That's what I would have charged him with. And I believe that's the actual charge that can get a conviction. Now, where does manslaughter charge break down if we're talking about from the state's perspective? What's the only thing that can actually challenge the manslaughter is self-defense. The only way for the self-defense to be valid, you guys, is if Karmelo can prove or he can show that there were multiple threats when he delivered that assault against Austin. You guys, that is his only defense. Because outside of that, there's no justification for using a knife against a physical altercation where there was no level of force used against them that was high enough to justify him using a knife.